was in conversation today with Louis, an amazing, amazing South African climber. So thank you for your support and for joining me every week to just listen to what's happening around the world, what's happening with the climbing, and to learn from people like Sibusiso, people like Louis, and others that have been on the platform with us. And today, I'm co-hosting with Jeanette McGill. That is the first South African woman to summit Mount Manaslu. But there's a lot more firsts in the house today, and that's where Louis comes in. I am going to talk to Louis about, more specifically, he obviously has done the 7 summits, but more specifically, we're going to focus on the 8,000-meter mountains that we talked about a few weeks ago. And he is currently a South African that's holding the summit of the most 8,000ers than anybody else, because he's done 4. And wait until you hear more about it. Louis, please tell us a little bit more about who you are, because some people don't know who you are. I mean, I think that would be amazing as a starting point.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting me. I look forward to this, so thank you very much for that. So who am I? Well, passionately South African, passionate mountaineer, but I guess, as you said, not many people necessarily know about me. I'm just the guy next door. I'm the guy next door. I don't think I'm particularly talented in any particular area, except I like to set big goals and go for them. So that's me, just kind of literally your guy next door. I've always been very happy with that label. But what's making me different is this thing about, and it's useful for mountains, big goals, and then going for them. I have failed on mountains, and I've gone back and I've succeeded, and that's part of who I am. I don't take failure well at all. So that's me. That's me.
We have that in common, Louis. So I'm in good company with you on that one. So the 8,000ers, I mean, I can understand 7 summits, which most people have done, most people know about, and they talk about. But when did the 8,000 meter and above peaks become a thing for you and a big goal, as you put it? And how did you start on that journey?
So it's almost like my mountaineering journey, Sarah. When I went to my first mountain, Mont Blanc, I was just so clueless. There's just no other way to describe it. I didn't know what I was doing. I summited, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't start mountaineering with the objective of doing the 7 summits. It evolved. It really evolved. It was only after I summited Denali that I said, okay, maybe the 7 summits is something I can achieve. And then I went and I did Cho Oyu as a test to see how I will cope with 8,000 meter altitude. Yeah. And when I went to Cho Oyu, it wasn't for any other reason except it's training for Everest. And then I went to Everest, and that was completion of the 7 summits. And it was only after Everest that I started to think, I really enjoy 8,000 meter climbing. And then when I went to Manaslu in 2013, which really was a hard climb, I think underestimated, but what a hard, tough climb. And it's this thing for me about digging so deep, mentally, physically, over a long period of time, 6 weeks on a mountain, up and down, up and down. Other people go home, you stay because you're hungry for the summit. So it was really after Everest only that I decided I like 8,000 meter climbing, because it talks to, I think, again, it's life. Life is not just a linear trajectory of A to B to C. There's ups and downs and failures and successes. Yeah. And it was only then after Everest, Ray, that I said, I like 8,000 meter climbing, and that's my focus. And really is my focus. I have no interest currently on anything other than 8,000 meter climbing.
Oh, fantastic.
So what you've highlighted there is these 8,000 meter mountains, and you mentioned the guy next door, and I don't necessarily think that when you first did these summits, it was to be the first South African flag. You probably do a lot of this stuff for the enjoyment, but just generally by the way that, South Africans have been held back in the world of high altitude mountaineering for so long, you now have become, the first South African on 4 of the 8,000 meter mountains, making you the person with the most 8,000 meter summits in all of South Africa. So congratulations for that. But I'm sure in this journey that you've gone on, you have seen your peers change and the interest from South Africa change since you mentioned Cho Oyu in 2008. You're still at it. You tried a mountain, which we'll get to a bit later last year. How have you seen sort of the South African interest change and shift towards 8,000 meter mountaineering? Have more people come about to climb these mountains since you've been at it?
Geez, that's a great question, Jeanette. It's just for me, it's material, the change that I've seen in South Africans on big mountains. I think back to when you and I met the first time. I think back to meeting Sarai 2015. When she popped in with Vuvuzela at our tent. You meet people on these mountains, and I think what I have seen is that the change I've seen is that South African climbers on 8,000 meter mountains are good climbers. I think that's the first thing that I've seen. They're good climbers. They're prepared climbers. They're well prepared, well trained. They're physically fit. They're mentally fit. And feedback I've been getting from people is, other countries, their climbers, they like us because we're not the ego-driven climbers. It's not about the ego. Yes, so I happen to be the first South African to summit Manaslu and Lhotse, but it really doesn't matter. What matters is I do something that I love, and I met up with Mike Horn last year at base camp of the other mountain, and Mike said the same. Mike Horn said he does his stuff because he loves it, and even though he's Swiss, he's still South African. We spoke Afrikaans in and he spoke about Stellenbosch, which is his passion. So I've definitely seen more and more South Africans doing the big mountains, and that's great to see. I've bumped into South Africans on big mountains that I didn't know before the time. And then you meet up with them, and we have got really good credibility on 8,000 meter mountains. We are not seen as, you're from Africa. What are you doing in the Himalayas or Karakoram? And it makes me very proud, Jeanette, to be a South African climbing these mountains and, wearing the South African flag and all of the stuff that goes with that. And to know that the world is seeing that we've earned our place as South Africans on these mountains. We don't have to stand back for others. We don't have the mountains to go and train that other countries have, and I miss that. But in spite of that, we get to these big mountains with credibility, and that's great to see that. I think 8,000 meter mountains, it is just opening up for South Africans. And geez, we've got good 8,000 meter climbers in this country. We have good climbers who I think can go and climb any mountain in the world. That's my view.
Wow. I've had a different experience because I've been asked, what am I doing on the mountain? But I guess with time, that is going to go away. And there's a lot of ignorance that we need to actually educate people differently. So Everest 2010, is the time that you summited and you completed your 7th summit. What was the hardest part of this process? And before you answer, let me just acknowledge the people that are on the line. Hello, Charlene. Always lovely to see you, and congratulations on summiting the highest peak in Zambia. Well done. I must say you were glamping and not camping. I saw you were all fancy with the chefs, Yeah. Susan says to you, Louis, that there is no way you are the guy next door because you have inspired so many people, and thank you for that. She also says we don't have altitude, but we do have attitude. You're right about that, Susan. Absolutely right. Tell us about your hardest moments on Everest and just your experience in 2010.
Thank you. I think Everest was hard. It's a very hard mountain to climb. I'm in the camp of Alan Arnett, who is a good friend of mine, and we were 10 buddies on Lhotse in 2015, and climbed Manaslu together. Alan always says respect for people on Everest. Forget about the crowds. When you go to Everest, it means that you have got massive ambition, and that is something that binds everybody that goes to that go to Everest. I never found the icefall to be tough. 1 to 2 is really easy. I didn't even find the Lhotse face tough. I found the Lhotse face really, really enjoyable. I loved climbing that. 3 to 4 wasn't tough. High camp to the balcony, that's just a slog. But I did find from the balcony at 8.4 to the South Summit, that was very, very, very hard. It's because you're so high at 8.4 when you at the balcony, and I love the view. That thin knife edge ridge where you've got the Kanching face on your right, and then of course what people don't know about, and it's the I think they call it the Tenzing step. Is that correct? Before you get to the South Summit. That was very, very hard. It's vertical rock climbing at, what is that, 8,700 meters. You do vertical rock climbing on Everest. So that bit, for me, was 8.4 balcony to the top of the South Summit. That was hard. I had to dig deep. I had to make sure I concentrate on every single step. And then once I topped out on the South Summit, and I saw the Hillary step and I saw the summit of Everest, I knew I was going to summit. And that section wasn't that hard for me either. I didn't find the Hillary step to be hard. But 8.4 to the South Summit, boy, oh boy, that was hard. But the entire experience for me was, it's been 10 years on the 23rd of May this year, and it still feels like yesterday.
Absolutely.
It feels like yesterday. It's so big. It's so massive to know you're standing on the highest point in the world. And for me also, I've worked hard. It took me, I don't know what, 12 years to get to the summit of Everest. It was for me a journey. So Everest was massive for me. Massive experience.
So Louis, you did mention previously a little bit briefly around what you did to run up to Everest. So maybe if we can chat a bit about the mountain that you did before Everest and then the mountain that you did after Everest. So that would be Cho Oyu that you did to test yourself to see if you could operate it at 8,000 meters. And I'd be curious to find out if, a lot of people are talking now about the importance of having done a couple of 7,000 meter mountains before you go for 8,000 meter mountains. So a bit of your strategy and your thoughts and your mindset around 7,000 to 8,000. I'd also be curious if Cho Oyu is as easy as they say that Cho Oyu is the easiest of the 8,000ers. And then after that, let's chat a little bit about our mountain in common. That's Manaslu, but we'll get to that in a second.
So, Jeanette, there were 2 tests for me to get to Everest. The one was obviously Cho Oyu, and then it was Denali, because Denali is such a hard mountain. You work so hard on Denali, carrying, I don't know, what is it, 25 kgs on your back, pulling a sled of 25 kgs. It's on the Arctic Circle. It's the coldest mountain in the world, and you just work on Denali. So I've done a whole bunch of 6,000 meter peaks, including Denali. I've done Aconcagua twice, as also prep for that. So I trained on Aconcagua. I've already summited Aconcagua, then I went back and I trained on Aconcagua for Everest. I summited Denali, I did Cho Oyu, and it was really deliberate, because what I liked about training on Aconcagua is you have huge altitude, but it's harsh conditions on Aconcagua. It's harsh. It's those winds, and you work hard on it. So it's great training ground for me. Denali, how hard you work. Nothing comes easy on Denali. There's not an easy day on Denali. When you fly into the glacier and you start that very first hill out of the glacier, you work, and then of course Cho Oyu for altitude.
Is Cho an easy climb though?
No, it's not. Of the 4 I've done, I would say it's the easiest of the 4. I will go that far, but it's not an easy mountain, not by a long shot, because you've got the altitude, and then I think psychologically and mentally, I don't think many people understand how big 8,000-meter mountains are. They're just massive. And on Cho Oyu, the popular press, the media talks about the ice cliff at 6,800 meters as one of the big obstacles. Well, you get to the top of that cliff, and then you now think, I've got to be close to the next camp. And you get on top of that ice cliff, you can't even see the next camp. You've got another 4 hours to get to that next camp. And there's tougher parts above that ice cliff that you need to navigate to get to the next camp. So not an easy climb, Jeanette, at all. I think it's perfect training to go and test yourself on. I think it's a reasonably safe 8,000-meter mountain, but not easy. I will not. It's not easy. Easy days, maybe. Getting to advanced base camp is maybe easy. 1 to 2 is hard. 2 to 3 is hard. So it's not easy.
So let's pivot onto the other mountain that people also do, possibly sometimes as a run up to Everest, and it has become a lot more popular over the years. And that is Manaslu. We know that it's dangerous. There was a very dangerous avalanche actually the year before you went. 12 people died in the avalanche. And as I would also have a testament to, we probably both know that the crux on that mountain is Camp 1 to Camp 2 through this incredible ice field. Can you maybe talk us through Manaslu and what was unique for Manaslu for you? And also probably the fact that you did that after Everest. So now your body, that you can get up to those extreme altitudes. So Manaslu is quite a bit lower. So therefore, could you be a bit blasé, or did you still have to knuckle down and work hard for Manaslu after you had done Everest?
Very, very good question. I was blasé when I went to Manaslu, and I learned so much on Manaslu because you kind of have this mindset that says, I have summited Everest. Now I'm going to go to Manaslu. It's still an 8,000-meter peak, but it's 700 meters lower than Everest. So, the summit of Manaslu is a little bit higher. I mean, it's halfway between the South Col and the balcony on Everest. So, I definitely wasn't as well prepared as I should have been for Manaslu. I was very angry with myself because I got found out very, very soon. Very, very soon. Even Jeanette, I mean, you've done it, getting to Camp 1, I was not happy with my performance, but I only had myself to blame, hey? I only had myself to blame. I made those choices. And 1 to 2 was really, really hard. It's those very narrow ice gullies, very, very steep, can become claustrophobic, climbing that. Very cold, as 1 to 2. There's just something about climbing 1 to 2 on Manaslu. And what do you do it? I think 2 or 3 times on Manaslu. Every day is just so bitterly cold when you hit those very narrow ice gullies. And it was hard for me, climbing those ice gullies. And I remember to this day that the only way to get through that was, and that's why I like 8,000-meter climbing, because it's painful, right? There's a lot of pain when you climb 8,000-meter mountains. It's cold and you're miserable. You didn't sleep well the previous night, and and it's all about how soon do you want the pain to stop. And that for me mentally, Jeanette, was how I climbed 1 to 2, because I was struggling physically. It was hard. It's hard climbing. You get found out, as I did. But it was for me about how long do I want this pain to continue? And I had this thing about I don't like the pain, and it motivates me. I don't like to take a lot of breaks when I climb. I just get cracking and I climb. I don't take many breaks, and I didn't take many breaks on Manaslu either. But it was all about just this knowledge that in those ice gullies, that this next step is half a meter closer to getting rid of the pain. And That's really how I did it. And I also had my climbing partner Paul with me, and Paul was behind me, and he's a Brit. And the best of times, Paul was not necessarily the most sensitive person in the world. It was good to have him behind me. So I believe in having climbing buddies because it worked for me specifically through 1 and 2. But yeah, it's this thing about just the next step. It's closer to the goal. And what is half a meter? It's nothing. But put 1,000 half a meters together, and that's the goal for the day. A hard mountain, honestly, the hard mountain.
Yeah, that is interesting. I just want to take you back to Lotte. I spoke to Kathy a few weeks ago, and she was the first South African to attempt, but I think they got onto the 4th summit, and you became the first South African person to actually summit Mount Lotte. So first of all, congratulations on that. But I know it was on the first try. It was on the 3rd try. I want you to tell us a little bit more about how did you dig deep to get going, and also touch on the fact that there is this double summit that people are talking about, Summit Everest and Summit Louis. How practical is that? And what do you think are the prospects of more and more people doing that?
So I went to Lhotse the first time in 2014.
Yeah.
And on the day that myself and 2 of my fellow team members, we headed into the icefall for some training. And as you know, we wanted to just kind of get halfway up the icefall to the popcorn. We just wanted to go and play with the ladders and test our skills. And at 6:45 that morning, as we were heading to the icefall, it was that big serac that broke loose on the west side of Everest. Came down the icefall, and sadly, 16 Sherpas lost their lives.
Yeah.
So the mountain was closed. So we couldn't. So for that, in 2014, where I went to, do a decent attempt on Lhotse, I couldn't because of what happened. And then the mountain was closed. So got to base camp, came back to South Africa, couldn't climb. Went back in 2015. That's why I met Alan on it. And I met Alan in 2013, but Alan and I were tent buddies in 2015. And I remember that day we were kind of climbing 1 to 2. And at midday, I remember, and I've got a photo, myself, Alan, and the team members. And I remember saying to Alan, this expedition is going wonderfully well. I remember saying that it was 11:30. This is going well. Half an hour later, the earthquake hit Nepal. That killed 9,000 people and also, I think, 21 people at base camp. So when the earthquake hit, I was halfway between 1 and 2. 30 seconds, probably the worst 30 seconds in my life on a mountain, 45 seconds. We got to 2, and then we stayed there, I think, for 1 or 2 nights, and then it was the disaster in Nepal. We couldn't get off the mountain. We had to be chopper rescued off the mountain. We were in survival mode. And again, they closed the mountain. So now, 2 attempts on Lhotse, and I couldn't really climb Lhotse. And this is, for me, Sarah, a very good question to ask, because when you go back the 3rd time, like I did in 2018, and I've tried twice, and I couldn't even climb the mountain because of circumstances totally out of my control. It is about how hungry are you to climb these mountains, and whether you climb mountains for the right reason. And that's a very important point, for me at least. I think some people climb, I don't know, maybe for the wrong reasons. I climb because I love it. I don't climb to be the first this or the first that or whatever. I just don't. First South African to do this. I don't. It's nice to have done it. Jeanette, you're the first South African to do female on that. Sarah, you're the first black lady to do Everest. I mean, these are nice accolades, but that's not why we climb, right? Yeah. So going back the 3rd time, and when I went back, I had to ask myself, why do I want to go back to Lhotse specifically? And I had a big pull factor to go back to Lhotse. The pull factor was not at that stage, I also thought that Kathy already summited Lhotse. So there was no pull factor on being the first South African. The pull factor was, as you know, the Lhotse Couloir, which is very, very steep and direct and very exposed climbing. And just like I had to go to Cho Oyu to test myself for Everest, I needed to go and climb the Lhotse Couloir for the bigger purpose, which is the mountain we'll talk about a little bit later. So that was for me why Lhotse was such a great pull, because it was, again, to test myself doing very technical, exposed and steep climbing at 8,400 meters. And it worked out for me. Just so lucky on Lhotse. Wonderful experience. Me and a Sherpa alone on the summit at 6:30 in the morning or 6:45, whatever it was. On the summit of Lhotse, looking across at the summit of Everest, which is so close you can touch it, but it's also far away, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to dig deep on Lhotse because of the 2 previous attempts that kept me from climbing for reasons out of my control. But I was very hungry. I was very hungry for Lhotse, really. I was hungry for that mountain.
Our summit, Lhotse and Everest, do you have a view on that?
Everest, the Lhotse summit is more technical, Sarai, because of the Lhotse Couloir. They're close, but I would still say that probably Everest was the hardest summit day because it's longer. And the difference in altitude is material. 8516 versus 8848. It's material at those altitudes. So and also I think coming down, it's as you know, on an 8,000 meter mountain, once you summit, you want to get off that mountain as fast as you can. And it's faster to get from the summit of Lhotse to safety, which is Camp 4, than what it is to get off the summit of Everest, down the Hillary step, up the south summit and then those big abseils. So all in all, Everest was the hardest summer day, harder than Lhotse for me, yeah.
Would you go back and do Lhotse directly after Everest? I know there's a couple of people aiming for the sort of double where you summit Everest and sleep again at the South Col and immediately go for Lhotse. How do you think that challenge is?
I think it's hard. We had, when I was there in 2018, we had one of the guys in our team who did that. He did that. He just said to me afterwards, it was just tough, physically, mentally, beyond comprehension. So I think, Jeanette and Sarai, I think physically it's probably, it's achievable physically, because once you've summited Everest, you get back to the South Col, you rest, sleep one night, hydrate, rehydrate, eat, and then you get to that Y and you hit Lhotse. Physically, you can do it because you've just summited Everest. But the bigger challenge, I think, will be mentally. I think when you wake up after that night, after your Everest summit, when you wake up and you now need to say, I now need to get up Lhotse. All my mates are going down to Camp 2. I need to get up Lhotse. Mentally, I think that's the toughest part. It's achievable. It's definitely achievable.
Okay.
I'm just glad. For me personally, I liked having done them as separate expeditions. Personally.
Fair enough. But like you were saying, Lhotse for you, Lhotse Couloir is very much training for your current project. And your current project is in a different portion of the Himalayas. We're quite familiar with the Nepalese Himalayas and probably not so familiar with the Karakoram, but the piece de resistance, I guess, of high altitude mountaineering and an interesting mountain that no South African has yet climbed, but it's still a challenge. Was the Lhotse Couloir good training for your first attempt on K2, Louis?
It was good training. I was on K2 last year, 2019. It was good training for K2. No question about that. But if I think back to the route I attempted on K2, which is the Tsessen route, which is more direct. It's a more direct line than the Abruzzi. So 75% of people on K2 would take the Abruzzi route. So we took the Tsessen, and I had no idea. I couldn't conceptualize really how steep and how direct the climbing is on K2. It is, Camp 1 to Camp 2 on K2. There's literally one spot where you can sit on a rock and take a break.
Yeah.
One. I'm not exaggerating. There's one spot, and it is just so direct, so continuous, steep. It's just steep. You get on the fixed line, you go up, you hit this rock, then around the rock it's to the right, and you head up. It just doesn't stop. It just does not stop. Camp 1 to 2 on the Tsessen, there's one flat section, which is a little traverse, and it's maybe 10, 15 meters. And then above that traverse, it is, I don't know, 70 degrees of climbing, 75 degrees, 80 degrees.
Are you telling us that your calves are the size of watermelons?
Jeanette, there's no place to take a break. I've got a photo that my Sherpa took of me taking a break between 1 and 2. I'm standing into the face, as you know, with your backpack with a beaner clipped into the rope. I'm standing front pointing, right? Taking a sip of water. It is just steep beyond anything, but at the same time, just the most incredible, beautiful climbing that I've ever done. So the Lhotse Couloir was definitely fantastic preparation for it. Knowing what I know today, I actually should have summited Lhotse, go back down to Camp 4, sleep, and go back. Sleep, go back. That's the right training. That's the training.
Did you change your route on K2 the next time you go back, or are you going to stick with the Tsessen?
I don't know. We took the decision on the Tsessen given the conditions. So the Tsessen is more direct, but on the Abruzzi there's a lot of rockfall. Right? And so we just felt that the Tsessen was probably the safer route.
Yeah.
But there's this massive serac at the top of the Tsessen. So, it's K2. K2 is K2. I would like to go back to the Tsessen. We'll look at the conditions next year. I would like to do the Tsessen again. It's such a beautiful line, and it's such a steep line. And I guess, as we said earlier, you want to get rid of the pain. But all three of us have done 8,000 meter peaks. We also like the pain. so because we're crazy, right? We like the pain. I would like to do the Tsessen again. It's I feel it's unfinished business.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Somebody actually said that K2 has become less dangerous than it was a few years ago. So maybe after 2019, when you go back, it will be a lot more friendly than it was when you were there in 2019. So Louis, let's just go back to your climbing career. What were the worst moments, or just one worst moment that you can think of? What made it worse? And what lessons could you tell us about that you picked up from this moment that you actually select?
So obviously, I spoke about the the devastation in 2015 on the earthquake. That was devastation. In all ways. But another bad moment worst moment was actually on Carstens Pyramid. I was very fortunate to be part of two people. I admire them greatly, Alex Harris and Sean Disney. So we were the first South African team ever on Carstens Pyramid, with another good friend of mine, Mike Aldous, and an American, Mike Hodges. But there's one part on Carstens Pyramid. It's It's a rock face that you need to traverse, and it's literally maybe, I don't know, 15 centimeters that you're on this thing. And some people traverse it with their bodies facing the rock. I decided I'm going to do this with my back facing the rock, right? And you're on this very, very thin ledge. You have to do it, and you have got your harness on, and you've got your clipped in. And I actually looked down at my harness, and I actually saw I wasn't clipped in properly, and I go cold as I'm here right now at this moment. I go cold to think. And I remember I looked down, I looked at my harness, I looked at the rope, I looked at my carabiner. So my carabiner was clipped into the rope, but it wasn't clipped. The rope wasn't properly tied into my harness. That big, that locking carabiner, we always get taught about use the locking carabiner on your harness. I had a locking carabiner, and that was a bad moment. That was a bad moment. I never told Alex Harris and Sean about this, because they probably would have bulleted me off the expedition right there and then. But what was bad about that, and it was a big lesson learned as well. We climb mountains, and we know all about check your buddy and do all of that stuff. But in the end, the biggest lesson is you own that climb, right? You own your decisions. You've got to take accountability for those decisions. And yes, we did a buddy climb, but I took a break just before I hit that part of the climb, and that's the lesson. You need to take accountability for these decisions that can have some dire consequences. So that was a big lesson. And after that, I think my dedication to safe climbing probably went up a notch. And I believe in safe climbing. There's no mountain for me that's worth taking unnecessary risks on. Not a single mountain. There's no mountain that's worth it to lose one digit of a finger. It's not worth it.
But in your tapestry of the mountains that you have climbed, I'm going to quickly ask you 4 quick fire questions, Louis. Right. And I'm going to ask these questions, and you just have to give me the name of the mountain that best satisfies the question. You don't have to give an explanation at the moment. Okay. So of all of them, which was the most satisfying?
Lhotse.
Which don't you ever want to return to?
Mt Everest in Russia.
Which was the hardest?
Everest.
Which would you repeat?
Everest North.
So that Elbrus one was fairly interesting. Can you expand on why you would never go back to Elbrus?
I suspect they didn't give him enough vodka.
It was because of too much vodka after the summit, the dome pub. That's why I don't want to go back to Elbrus. No, it was just for me not. It was just I didn't really enjoy Elbrus. It was just for me. I guess I expected more. It's 5,600. I enjoyed the summer day, but I just wanted more. For me, I wanted more. I wanted more of a challenge of the highest mountain in Europe. That's it. I've done Mont Blanc.
You wanted an extra 2,000 meters, Louis.
I wanted it to be harder. Really, I wanted to be more. I wanted to be harder and more technical. It wasn't hard enough. It was still a hard mountain. I don't want to make it into a lesser objective. I expected more in terms of technical difficulty on Elbrus.
That is interesting. Hello, Delia. Thank you so much. She's saying hello to everybody. And Cindy, thank you. We see you. Thank you for joining us. Louis, let's just go back to you. What advice, knowing what you know today and the experience that you've gone through, would you give to a younger self? And I'm hoping that the younger people watching this would listen carefully and not make some of the mistakes that we've made, or Louis, some of the insights. You can benefit from some of these insights.
Let me not talk about the mistakes I've made when I started climbing. Boy, oh boy. Geez, today. But yeah, I think the first thing is I wish I had a mentor when I started. I wish I had somebody that I could ask questions of. I wish I had somebody that I could go for a cup of coffee and say, just talk to me about mountaineering and talk to me about altitude sickness and, talk to me about ice climbing and winter camping skills. And, what do you think I should be doing? I'm telling people now, I've got a bunch of friends who, we've been training last weekend here on the Westcliff Stairs. And, I said to them afterwards, they want to go to a different mountain. And I convinced them to go to the Alps to go and acquire technical skills. Go and acquire skills. I wish somebody said that to me. So I think for the younger people listening, I really urge people to find yourself a mentor, somebody who's done this stuff, somebody who's got the wisdom of the mountains, and I think this concept of wisdom of the mountains, it's a very, very important concept. So that's number one. Number two, I wish I had a climbing buddy from the start. It's nice to go and sign up for commercial expeditions and you meet very interesting people. But for me, in terms of mountaineering as my passion, to have a climbing buddy who complements you, like yin and yang, where you climb together and you don't need to discuss stuff. It just works between you. And I was very fortunate to have climbed with Paul, my climbing buddy, for many, many years on these mountains. So that's number two. I think the third one is, don't waste money on buying rubbish gear. I have wasted so much money buying gear and reading websites, and then buying boots online. I mean, how dumb must you be to buy 8,000 meter boots online? You can't do stuff like that. I probably spend more money sending stuff back overseas than what I spent on the actual gear. So gear is a very important thing. Saray, I've really wasted money buying gear that A, I didn't need, or B, that just weren't sufficient for the mountain that I was climbing. I think those would be the three big things. Get a mentor, somebody who can take you under his or her wing. Get yourself a climbing buddy where you don't need to discuss stuff. It just works. And just buy the right gear. Buy the right gear. Pay more. But, that piece of gear is going to last you 20 years. I have got so much gear from 2008 that I still use because it's good gear. Those are the three things, huh? And maybe the last thing is just, just train in terms of what works for you. I have bought mountaineering training programs from outfits, and they're very, very good programs, right? But in the end, I know the training that works for me. It maybe doesn't work for you, maybe it doesn't work for Jeanette. It works for me. And that's how I.
Well, we already know that. Sarah's the runner. I'm simply not. So we already work.
I'm not a runner.
Through your
that I got from that, which I totally buy into, is the wrong gear. When I first climbed Kilimanjaro, I went to this store. I suspect the guy had never even gone to the Drakensberg, sold me a whole list of nonsense. I didn't use 50% of the stuff. And stuff that they claimed was waterproof wasn't waterproof. So that's great advice. Thank you for sharing. Jeanette, do you want to add on to that? What's your piece of advice?
I also like the idea about having a climbing partner, somebody that gets you, because there's so much stuff at the high level altitude that you're just simply too exhausted to do. And if you've got somebody who understands your system, high altitude mountaineering is all about your own system. And if you've got somebody who understands your system, are you good in the morning? Are you cranky? Do you struggle with putting your crampons on? Are you a cold person? Are you a hot person? And if you've got somebody that you can work with, I think that that's quite important. But I guess that also goes into the question that I want to ask you now, Louis, is a bit around, yes, you can have somebody that you know as an additional client, but at the end of the day, the way mountaineering has got to these days it's a commercial undertaking, and there's a variety of ways that you can pay, and you can go onto the expeditions to climb mountains. Of course, you do have a couple of mountains where people will get a permit and do unclimbed routes on their own. But generally, for people like us at the moment, it's about putting our hard-earned dollars into the wallets of a commercial company. And some of them have got quite strict hand-holding requirements, and they walk quite close together. Whereas at the opposite extreme, you'd be doing absolutely your own thing. I think probably the difference is a guided arrangement, and probably what they're calling down the other end of the line is more where you're paying a company purely for logistics. You're getting them to service you in base camp, provide your meals, provide your base camp tent. But once you leave base camp and you go onto the mountain, you're far more at your own devices. And presumably there's a bit of a trajectory here. If you don't have that much experience under the belt, you do things a bit differently. So what is your thoughts around logistics, guiding? When do you know when to use what?
Jeanette, I'm very happy that, I've met some tremendous guides, climbing with guides. And I've learned from them. To have summited Mt Everest with Mike in front of me and the Sona behind me, it really meant a lot to me, because I not only were they guides, they became really good friends. The Sona and I, my Sherpa, we're friends to this day, and I will be seeing him next year when in Nepal. We're friends. You do get to a point, however, where I think that if you're serious about mountaineering, and if you climb for the right reasons, I think this concept of owning your outcome becomes more important, which is where you make your decisions, which is where, Jeanette, you know better than any guide how you acclimatize. So how can you fit into the schedule of a guided company that says, we're going to leave here, we're going to do that, then we're going to do this, and we're going to spend 2 nights there? You might need 2 nights at Camp 1. I need 3 nights, or I need 1 night. And the same, Saray, you've summited Everest. We're all different. And I just think part of safety for me, part of safe climbing for me is, for example, let's take acclimatization. I like to acclimatize properly on a mountain. I do not go for the minimum time above altitude. My philosophy is the more time I spend at, let's say, 7,000 meters or 7.5, the better I will be when I need to get to 8.5. Other people might disagree with me, and I respect your decision. And you climb with a guide. The guide says, listen, you only need to touch 7,000. It's enough. I want to sleep at 7,000. And I don't want anybody to say to me, Louis, our schedule is, we don't sleep at 7,000 for argument's sake. I want to sleep at 7,000. So I'm just experienced enough today to know what are the key success factors for me on 8,000 meter mountains. And I can't compromise on those things. I cannot outsource decision making on 8,000 meters to other people. I can't outsource those decisions anymore. I'm experienced enough to know what I need to summit, how I need to climb, and I own that decision. It's my expedition. I'm climbing for the right reasons. I do think for inexperienced people, go with a guide company. Go and learn how to do the Z pulley in crevasse rescue on Denali. A guide needs to, you can't figure that stuff out yourself. Go with a guide company. But then, if you're serious about this, and if it's a lifelong journey for you, a lifelong passion, get to the level of independence where you just sign up, you get your Sherpa, and go and climb the mountain.
And you made a valid point there around Sherpas. We sort of start developing relationships with our Sherpas as we go along. So have you got any views around, picking a Sherpa, how you start working with a Sherpa, any tips? And presumably now you have a bit of a cohort of Sherpas that you regularly rely on.
Jeanette, that's a great question. And, we both know Phil from Altitude Junkies. And, one of the things Phil gives you a Sherpa and then you need to go and climb the mountain, is you need to earn respect on a mountain. And I'm a big believer on that. You need to earn respect, like in life, like in business. You need to earn respect. How do you earn respect in business? You work hard. That's it. You work, you graft, right? And I believe the same thing to be true in building relationship with Sherpas. I want to show the Sherpa I work. I can also carry the massive loads. I can also put up the tent. I can also boil, I can also go and collect snow in a -30 blizzard. I've got the technical skills. And I'm on the mountain. I arrived here, and after not being prepared enough on Manaslu, when I went to Lhotse, I was just super fit and super strong on Lhotse because I worked for it, and I learned from the mistake I made, after summiting Everest and not preparing well enough for Manaslu. So I think building relationships with Sherpas is all about showing them your ability to work hard. You've got to earn respect. And I think that when Sherpas see you rock up and you just keep on handing everything off to a Sherpa, that's not the way I climb. I will ask for support. There's no question. I'll ask for support when I need to. But I will first do the work before I ask for help. And I do have a cohort of Sherpas, and there's some Sherpas I really enjoy climbing with. And it's almost like having a climbing buddy. When you have a Sherpa that gets you, your words, Jeanette, you want a climbing buddy that gets you. You want a Sherpa that gets you as well. And once you have that, and I've been on 25, 30 expeditions, it takes time to get to that point. But once you get to that sweet spot of a climbing buddy and a climbing Sherpa, what a great space to be in.
Yeah. So I just want to give a shout out to Karen. Delia is still here. Cindy. Karen is looking for a mentor. Karen, this is what the platform is all about. The little that we know, we'll share. We'll connect you with people like experienced Louis here and Jeanette and many others. So welcome to the club. This is a fun club to be in. So just give us some questions in there and I'll pose them to Louis. Louis, just getting back to you, what are your 3 most treasured gear equipment that you just don't go to the mountains without?
Right. The first one is this vest I'm wearing. It's a Patagonia vest, right? This thing is just, I promise you, when I'm on an expedition, I live in this vest. You will never see me. So this vest, then I have my 2 buffs that I summited Everest with, right? And in fact, Cho Oyu. So all my 8,000 meter climbs, these are my 2 buffs. I treasure them. And the third one is my mitts. So, you go and you do the research like all responsible climbers, and they come up with all these rating scales for a great mitt and all of that stuff. I bought these mitts in Anchorage when I did Denali, I think in 2006, right? And I do have my very fancy, I think, Outdoor Research Ultimates as my backup. This is, I've stood on the summit of 4 8,000 meter peaks with these mitts. So these are my 3 things. So I have my Patagonia vest, my 2 buffs, and my pyramids. And I don't care if nobody else knows about these mitts that I have. They work for me, and that's what matters.
That is interesting. Just let me throw in something there. What's the most your favorite exercise? Squat or lunges?
Lunges.
Okay. Why?
No, because when I do the lunges, there's kind of the covering the distance part. I like that. I can do lunges on a rugby field. I can go to my kids' school and I can do lunges. I like, and I get closer to my 10,000 steps goal every day. So I do the lunges.
Okay.
But more seriously, they just work. I just feel, for me, I like the dynamism of the movement. So that works for me. Also feel it works my leg muscles a little bit better.
Yeah. So I've read up a bit about you. I know I met you in 2015 on Everest when Donna, I don't know if you remember Donna, she dragged me from my tent to go and visit another South African and meet Alakanet. And there you were. I don't think you were bald at the time. Or is it because you had a buff on? But
a buff on, this is my kids. This is my kids. So
that's a good one.
I've been bold. I've been bold for many years.
I thought it's the mountains, but anyway. So I know you are a business strategist and you do a lot of consulting work. How do you bring the lessons from the mountain into the business world, and how do the two compare? You know, in terms of the approach in making decisions, has anything actually changed for you from the before climbing and after climbing that you brought into from one world to the next?
So I think what mountains gave me is, I think, more competence in business, because I like the experiential learning part of mountains. You know, you're not sitting in a classroom and learning about the latest academic research on purpose. You know, you don't climb the mountain. And you know, I mean, the single biggest lesson I've learned, because I failed on mountains. You know, I there were mountains I went to that I didn't summit, is this thing about, and I tell it to audiences when I speak, I tell it to my, I do a bit of coaching, I've got a consulting business. It's all about, when you give up on a mountain, it's the first step to giving up in life. And I truly believe that. You can fail on a mountain. There's a fundamental difference between failing on a mountain and giving up on a mountain. You know, you can fail and still have given the mountain your best shot. That's a great outcome. But to give up on a mountain, and I've seen people giving up on mountains. I've seen people getting to Everest Base Camp, and they said, I want to get to Camp 2 on Everest, and they look at the ice fall and they say, I'm not even going to try it. I mean, how can you not even try it? So I think that there's two or three of these lessons for me. There's one thing about the difference between failing and giving up. It's important in business as well. It's so crucial in business. In tough times, you need to make, let's say, a certain profit target. You don't know how, but you know that you just have to go and apply yourself in doing that. So that's a lesson for me out of my climbing. And the second one is this thing about, just if you don't achieve a goal, you can't blame other people for not achieving that goal. You need to own up. You need to own up. Maybe you didn't achieve the goal because you didn't have the right gear, or maybe you got sick, but you got sick because you didn't take good care of yourself. Maybe you got sick because you moved between camps too fast, or you didn't drink your 4 liters of fluids a day. So that for me is also such a big lesson that I got in the mountains, that I apply in my life as a business coach, a leadership development consultant, and in my business world, is you've got to own your performance. You can't outsource that stuff.
Yeah, that's so actually interesting, to take responsibility. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, it's just so, mountains have given me so much in terms of my own growth, my own development. My journey as a human being on planet Earth. I wouldn't have had it any other way. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that about owning it, because many times it's easy for us to own and take responsibility for the success. The failure, not so much. Do you find that, because I know you are a psychologist, that has helped you look at things differently than just a normal mountaineer? Does it have a role to play there?
Yeah. I failed twice on Aconcagua. I was very inexperienced. I didn't know what I was doing. On the one of my Aconcagua trips, so I got sick at Nida de Condores because I did something stupid. Sean Disney said, guys, in your tent, make sure there's enough ventilation. It was too cold and I didn't have enough ventilation. I got sick, right? Didn't summit. Went back the next year, didn't summit. My guide got sick at Nida de Condores. I started at Nida, which is 5.2, I think, and I wanted to go straight to the summit of Aconcagua, it's crazy to do stuff like that. So, and I remember I got back after I failed the second time on Ac, and I just blamed my guide. And I remember one day I just thought, but, because my guide was then, I left him at Nida when I went for the summit. I didn't summit. I got back. All I needed to do was to sleep one night at Nido, and I would have summited the next day. But I wasn't mentally tough enough. I want to get back to base camp, right? I needed one more night of hardship, and I would have summited Aconcagua my second attempt. But I didn't have the mental toughness. I didn't want the pain. I wanted the comfort of base camp, because from Nido, it's a couple of hours down to base camp, right? And I did blame my guide at the time, and then just one day after that failure, I remember, and it's been a big lesson for me, is I failed twice on Aconcaglia because I made mistakes. Moi. I made those mistakes. That's why I failed. Yes, bad weather. Yes, on a bunch of things. But in the end, I failed because I made mistakes. And I'm very grateful for the failures and for the way I looked at those, because I think those failures helped me to succeed on mountains later on in life.
So Louis, part of our journey in the outdoors, we are people that are pretty empathetic and involved in the various communities that end up around the mountains as well. And I also know that you're fairly involved with what's called the Tiger of the Snows Fund. Would you like to share with the audience what that's about and what it does?
So Tigers of the Snow has been started by my very good friend and Mike Hamill, whom I summited Mt Everest with. Mike started his own company. He used to guide for another commercial outfit, and then he started his own company called Climbing the Seven Summits. And Mike is just one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met in the mountains. We've become very, very good friends. And Mike started this fund, Tigers of the Snows, and I'm very privileged. I'm a board member of this fund and an executive director. And it's a US not-for-profit. And what we do is, so every CTSS climb, there's a certain percentage of all the income on every expedition that goes towards Tigers of the Snows. Next year, I want to do a climb, just a Tigers of the Snows climb to raise money. And the money is for especially the children of mountain workers in Nepal and Tanzania. That's kind of the markets. And, we just handed over, I think it was something like 14,000 US through the Tigers of the Snows Fund in Nepal, because as you know, no climbing, the Sherpas, their kids, there's just no income. So I'm very, very passionate about this.
That's
I want
great.
to do more. I need to do more, and I will do a climb next year just for this. It's a charity focusing specifically on mountain workers or children of mountain workers.
Thank you.
That is memorable. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that's what this platform is about. It's summits with a purpose. If you just climb to go and take a picture on the summit, it defeats the whole purpose. So thank you for your work in that respect. Louis, are there any other initiatives that you'd like to share with the audience? We are over an hour now. And maybe the exciting stuff that's, on the horizon that we can expect from you. And once you answer that, tell us where people can follow your journey. I constantly check on you on Instagram, amazing pictures that you share. Please go check it out. He's going to give us the page. He's got beautiful pictures, and they are not stamped, so we can steal them. Yeah, tell us about your next project and what you'd like to share.
So I'm very excited that obviously there's K2, which for me next year that's the big thing. That's massive. So that's the very top of my priority list in terms of next project. Then there is the Tigers of the Snows, the climb I want to do, and that might be something like a Kilimanjaro. I love Kilimanjaro. I've been there a few times. I think it's just a magnificent mountain. I want to combine that with a memorial climb for Paul, my climbing buddy, who not with us anymore. Which is and it's not a sad moment. It's a very, very positive moment, because I climbed with a wonderful, wonderful human being. His widow wants to build a school in his name in the Kanchenjunga area of Nepal. So we're busy raising funds to go and build the school, the Paul Samuel School in the Kanchenjunga area. So that's the project. And then, of course, I'm a latecomer to the world of social media. But there is something on as a psychologist, I like the concept of building future fit leaders. And I have taken, top talent of organizations to Kilimanjaro, some nice, interesting psychometric tests before and after, looking at the journey of individuals. So that's on my project list, and people can follow me on I think on Instagram. It's just Louis Carstens _8,000 meters. And yes, you can use my photos. I don't stamp them. Please feel free to use whatever photos you want to use from Instagram.
They're great pictures. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you so much, Louis, for joining us. And there we go. That is the man with the most 8,000 pics in South Africa. And what a humble man. What an amazing conversation we've had with you, Louis. And thank you for your time. And guys, ciao. And thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm not going to mention everybody in case I missed somebody. But it's been amazing. If you're watching now and if you're watching later, I hope you continue to follow us as we bring you amazing people from around the world to share their experiences so that you can learn and maybe share with us what you think. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.